Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Dono Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears up to some of the travails and tribulations that take place throughout our cities, our states, our country, and sometimes around the world. And I got this one straight out of Minnesota, where a doctor and a pharmacist were married young in their early 30s, and they started having troubles in their marriage. And as opposed to doing the old mantra of just getting a divorce and moving on, this situation led to an alleged murder and death of one of the spouses. And you're seeing a lot of this taking place in today's time, where people are not doing the traditional ways of separating and divorce, but instead of getting rid of one of their spouses through poisoning or other extenuating circumstances that lead back to a criminal complaint against the other spouse. And none of these situations turn out good. The husband or wife, the alleged perpetrator, ends up going to jail, and the victim ends up in a body bag and death. And here's another one of two very young professional people, a doctor and a pharmacist, who were swingers, had an open marriage, and things got out of hand, and the husband, the doctor, is the one who is alleged to have poisoned his pharmacist wife. So here we go. Former Mayo Clinic Dr. Connor Bowman began calling himself a widow in steamy Bumble conversations, the Bumble dating site, conversations just days before his pharmacist wife was found fatally poisoned after their open marriage turned deadly. A former Mayo Clinic doctor accused of killing his wife was already referring to himself as a widow days before her murder, search warrants have shown. Connor Bowman, Mr. Connor Bowman, 31, is charged with first-degree murder in the death of his wife, Betty Bowman, this past August. A 32-year-old pharmacist who had been in an open relationship with her husband, Connor Bowman, before her death. She was killed by a lethal dose of a drug meant to fight gout. Warrants filed Tuesday showed how Bowman conducted computer searches for lethal doses of the drug in the days before his wife's death, and how he also frequented the dating site Bumble while they were married. Witnesses who met Bowman through the app spoke to cops in Rochester, Minnesota, where the couple lived. Several said Bowman told them his wife had died at some point prior, offering a timeline ranging from 2 weeks to earlier last year. This is what he was telling the young ladies on the dating site, that his wife had already passed. According to the warrant filed in Olmsted County District Court, he told one woman his wife died earlier in the summer of listeria poisoning, a rare affliction brought on by a specific genus of bacteria that acts as a parasite. Before that, he told the same woman he knew what he wanted in life, and that Betty would have wanted him to move on to be happy. In another exchange with a witness he reportedly matched with 9 days after his wife died in a Rochester hospital, Connor Bowman brought up a large life insurance payout he was left as a result of his wife's death, a revelation the woman said she thought was a little strange. Other conversations and statements received from other witnesses indicated Bowman was identifying himself as a widower days earlier as well, before Betty's August 20th death. Another witness interviewed over the course of the investigation said Bowman told her his wife died of a morphine overdose a year prior, while a third woman said she met Connor Bowman through the site on September 5th. Connor Bowman was busy while he was still married and his wife was alive, preparing for her death, allegedly. She told cops in Olmsted County how she confronted him after learning his wife died just 2.5 weeks earlier, before they eventually honed in on him as a suspect after finding the drug cocaine in her system, which is used to treat gout. The warrant in turn demands access to Bowman's electronic devices, an account on a Bumble, as witnesses also said the suspect brought up the insurance payout from Betty's death as early as 3 days after she died. The warrant also details the extensive access Bowman had to lethal drug databases available through the University of Kansas, where he worked years before and was still employed on an as-needed basis, cops said. In the earlier days before Betty's death, Bowman searched the database for cocaine, as well as what the lethal dose would be for someone weighing 120 pounds. Betty, who was an operating room pharmacist who worked with her husband at the world-class clinic in Rochester, weighed about the same, the warrant says. Investigators added how they found nothing to suggest Bowman should have been investigating poisonings caused by the niche drug, which was later found in Betty's bloodstream. This is the cocaine. She died 4 days after being rushed to a hospital in dire straits after ingesting the drug, despite not having gout or any other medical issue at the time. The warrant, meanwhile, recounts interviews with several of the couple's friends and colleagues, many of whom recall a detached and indifferent reaction from Bowman following his wife Betty's death. Several also aired suspicion about the sudden and severe illness that claimed her life, recalling how healthy she was when they knew her. Also noted was Bowman's objections to an autopsy, after he told officials such an undertaking would be merely a hunting expedition that would turn up nothing, one witness said. He was also indicted by a grand jury months later, on January 4th, for the alleged part in his wife's death. He was arrested back last October. In an interview with DailyMail.com carried out this past January, Betty's friend and former bridesmaid Sarah Leeser described the red flags that led her to grow suspicious about her death. She revealed her friend was bisexual and had been dating 2 people at the time, a man and a woman, just before her death. She added how her husband Bowman had recently become infatuated with a new love interest, and Betty was concerned about how serious Connor was getting with this other woman, getting entangled. Betty didn't understand why he was so infatuated, said Sarah. They both saw different people, but there was something different about this girl, and it was more like obsession for Connor. At one point, Connor and the woman broke up, Sarah said. He was super depressed and wanted to be with her all the time. Betty, who died on August 20th, was also upset that her husband often lied about his activities and whereabouts, telling her he was at work when he was actually out on a date. It was the lying and keeping secrets that became a problem, Sarah said. But there are other factors threatening their marriage, including their views on children. Connor wanted to start a family. Betty didn't. How does Connor want to start a family when he has multiple liaisons with all these other different women off the Bumble site, lying about his wife's death before she even died, and he's still married to Betty? I don't know where he would have, and he has to work. Where does he have time? And he has to plot the alleged murder of his wife by poisoning her. Where does he have time to raise children? As Betty contemplated whether the marriage could be saved, Sarah said she and other friends offered her a place to live. Still, amid the turmoil, Sarah said she had no concern Connor might harm her. She never knew him to be physically abusive. She also didn't recognize the red flags when Betty ended up in the hospital with a sudden illness, nor when Connor told her that Betty, a healthy woman, was suffering from a genetically inherited illness called hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis, a rare disease causing her organs to shut down. After Betty's death, and by the way, based on the autopsy and a familiar genetic study, she did not have that disease, which they call HLH, hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis. She did not have it, and he was saying that she did have it to confuse the doctors that were performing the autopsy because it's a very rare genetic disease. Remember, he's a doctor. After Betty's death, she noted she found it disconcerting when Connor started talking about collecting $500,000 in life insurance, and when he began openly flaunting his relationship with his new girlfriend. Just days after Betty's death, Sarah said, Connor invited his lover to join her and other mutual friends at a winery where she saw them smiling, kissing, and hugging. It wasn't until days later, when detectives reached out, that Sarah grew suspicious and began to question everything that had happened before and after Betty's death. An expert on poisons, Dr. Bowman, is currently being held in the Olmsted County Adult Detention Center on a $2 million bond. Man, what a diabolical story if all of these allegations are correct. And I have done several videos where wives have poisoned their husbands, husbands have poisoned their wives, as opposed to the easiest way to get out of a complicated situation and or marriage is just get a divorce. These are two highly educated individuals, 31, 32 years old, in the beginning of their life. And this Connor Bowman, who took an oath to help and heal people, decides to turn the other way and go into a devilish and negative way, and decides to kill, allegedly poison his own wife. Here again, he went to medical school, did a residency, is working at the Mayo Clinic. Evidently, he must be a very bright guy intellectually, but must have a very low spirit, because he took an oath to help folks, and then now you see that he ended up allegedly committing the ultimate crime in poisoning and killing his own wife. How do you have this dichotomy going on inside of you, where there's a yin and yang, a black and white, a good and bad, and evidently the evil or the bad superseded all aspects of his goodness and his level of cerebral consciousness, that he decides it is okay to poison and kill his wife, all for the $500,000 insurance policy, because it also came out that he had innumerable amounts of financial problems, and he saw his only way out was to poison his wife, move on as a single man, take the $500,000 life insurance policy, and hope and pray that it never comes back, that he was the perpetrator of his wife's demise and death. Just when we uphold and lift up and appreciate and even look up to individuals that have garnered the highest degrees as physicians, dentists, lawyers, judges, police chiefs, principals, we have to be reminded that they're still human beings that are heavily flawed and sometimes can make very, very poor decisions under stressful scenarios, anxiety, mental health issues that many times go unaddressed. And some of these highly educated individuals, there's a certain level of narcissism that takes place where they think they are the smartest in the room, even in trying to commit a heinous crime like poisoning a spouse and thinking you can get away with it and beating the system, when in totality they find out they're not the smartest in the room, and this gentleman will potentially spend the rest of his life in jail. What he has been alleged to have done has decimated his wife's family, and of course has destroyed her, which led to her death. And now his life will be over. He will never get out of prison if he is found convicted of first-degree murder of his spouse, and will spend the rest of his life in jail and will have a very rough time once the other inmates find out about it. This man was 31 years old in the beginning of his life. Pandora's box was opening up for all the great things that America has to offer for somebody that has made a conviction to be a physician, a doctor, to help and heal people, make a good living, eventually have a family, and all of that has dissipated and disappeared as a result of him deciding that he could outslick the system and potentially and allegedly poison his wife, which led to her death. What an unfortunate story, and now both of their futures have been destroyed. He will live life by death in prison, and she ended up losing her life due to poisoning at 32 years old. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a righteous, positive, and God-fearing way.